Hello there, everybody, and welcome to Harrah's Hoosier Park, as it is time to take a look at the Preakness. Michael Chamberlain and Jacob Reinheimer here in the Dan Patch studio. And Jacob, we have a field of 9 horses in Baltimore at Old Hilltop, going 1 mile and 3/16. The 150th renewal of the Preakness. No Sovereignty, the winner of the Kentucky Derby. He elected to wait. And I got to say, looking back at the Derby, now while we didn't necessarily have the right numbers and everything, we did kind of flesh out the way that race was going to go. And if Final Gambit didn't have to go through downtown Lexington to get there into contention, he might have actually gotten up there and hit the board. So I thought, usually the Derby is a period of reflection and then self-loathing afterward, but I actually thought that we did a pretty good job on that one.
Yeah, I agree. I thought you were dialed in. You love when your top selection at least gives a good effort,
Yeah.
right? You look like you know something a little bit. I'll never get to know about Luxor Cafe. He kind of got wiped out at the start a little bit, so that is what it is. It happens when you get 20 horses together, and as I said, we come back with 9 horses here in the Preakness. It is notable. The one horse who is missing, of course, takes a little bit of steam out of the Preakness, but still great to see Journalism back in action after a very good effort, and I think a compelling race here.
We've got actually a couple of horses that actually were in the Derby that did come back to American Promise. D. Wayne Lucas, who did win the Preakness last year with Seize the Gray, brings American Promise back off the 16th place finish at Louisville. And Sandman, who finished 7th in the Kentucky Derby, is also part of this field. In fact, Sandman is the second favorite in this race, as we will take a look at the field of 9. The 8-5 favorite on the morning line, number 2, Journalism, the runner-up in the Kentucky Derby, and a very stout 8-5. I think if you get any more than 3-5 on him, you should take that to the bank.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement there, and I do really appreciate Journalism for the effort he put forth in the Derby. We all wondered how he was going to handle that much traffic, and he gave a really good showing. I just thought I got tracked down by maybe a better horse on that day in Sovereignty.
Exactly.
So that was a very good effort on Journalism. He did absolutely nothing wrong.
I agree with that entirely. He ran a great race. He just got beat by the better horse on the day. The second choice is 4-1 Sandman, who I mentioned. Johnny Velasquez riding that one. And the third choice is number 6 River Thames, 9-2 on the morning line. And River Thames, of course, had some promise on the Derby trail. They did have the points to get in. Yep. And they elected to skip and come back in the Preakness, which I think ends up being a good decision in retrospect. So as we now take a look at our selections for Preakness 150, you're going to see a lot of similarity here because I just can't see him beating Journalism.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just going to let you do all the talking. I'll nod my head, and we'll go ahead and wrap this video pretty early. But no, I didn't see any way around Journalism. If he comes back, obviously a 2-week return is always a concern coming from the Derby, but I still thought, if you look at that Derby, he and Sovereignty were pretty well clear of the rest. I mean, that was a 2-horse race down the stretch. Even off the short layoff there, I think he's going to be the one to beat.
And even with the impressive closes of Baeza and Final Gambit, I just think that those two stood out, and they were certainly the best in the bunch. Now, one thing about this, remember a lot of times, especially going through the 1990s and into the 2000s, the horse that won the Derby would come back and win the Preakness. And Journalism, I will say this, I thought he ran what could have been a winning race in the Kentucky Derby. So using that logic, I think that Journalism is still on go, and I think that Journalism is going to run a big Preakness come Saturday. Now, I believe that I'm hearing some thoughts that there may be some rain in Baltimore on Saturday, but it didn't bother him in Louisville on the sloppy track, and he went out there and ran a very good race, and certainly, as I said, he could have won on any other day if Sovereignty just wasn't that little bit better.
He answered every question, right? Big field, and he raced on the slop. He answered every question, gave a great effort, and as I said, well clear of the rest there in the Derby. Just got beat by Sovereignty, who was the perfect trip right behind him. I just think he answered every question. As you said, the Preakness isn't always the one that would necessarily get the Derby horses, right? It's always the Belmont, a mile and a half, 3 weeks later that usually gets him. So I don't think it's a huge deal. We saw this, as you said, D. Wayne Lucas priming another one here with Seize the Gray a year ago. Like, that turnaround doesn't bother me too much. It's much more the Belmont where it concerns me a little bit more, and I think Journalism just absolutely primed for this.
I do agree, and our co-second choice here is the 8 Clever again. Steve Asmussen, trainee by American Pharoah out of the Galileo mare, so you may think this one might do some good stuff on the turf a little later, but has not been on the turf as of yet. Had a good start back at Keeneland in April of last spring, finished second going 4.5 furlongs there to Dream Away, and then has come back to win the 2 starts in 2025, the maiden breaking win at Oaklawn, and then popped a 101 Beyer figure on March 30th in the hot springs down there in Arkansas. This is the only other horse other than Journalism who has 3 of them to have a 100 or higher Beyer speed figure in this field, and I think that makes Clever Again a definite candidate here.
Yeah, total agreement there, and I think a lot of times the other horses from the Derby, I think they're going to take a lot of play, whether it be American Promise or I think Sandman. There's a lot of buzz around Sandman coming into the Preakness here, and he's a horse where, I mean, he had his nose right on the back of Sovereignty for much of that race, and then he just couldn't go with him around the last turn. I thought he kind of got left in the dust around the last turn, so I'm off Sandman quite a bit, and I think that opens up the door rather for a newcomer like Clever Again. You know Steve Asmussen's going to have a horse ready to go for this spot. He's going to be coming in fresh to this spot, so I like him quite a bit.
We need to talk a little bit about the pace setup in this race because essentially, I think the one at the inside goal-oriented is going to go, and Bob Baffert again gets the rail and the speed horse down there on the inside with a goal-oriented who has posted consecutive 91 Beyer speed figures in the 2 successive victories, one at Santa Anita, one at Churchill Downs. I figure American Promise will be forwardly placed again. You got to think Pay Billy, the winner of the Federico Tessio, is going to be up there. So, and I think Clever Again also is going to go. So I think you're going to see not necessarily a blistering pace like we expected in Louisville, but I think you're going to see a solid enough pace being set here.
Is it the Preakness if we're not talking about a Baffert speed horse from the inside?
Yeah,
because every Preakness, that usually turns into the conversation. He's stolen a few of these on the frontier in recent years. So that's going to be interesting to see with goal-oriented. But I agree with you. I think there's enough speed. There's not going to be a blistering pace, as you said, but I think it's going to set up for Journalism to stalk from just off
I think it does,
and I think
very
it's
well,
going to pick him up and put him down, turning for home.
Now, our co-third pick is the 6 River Thames. Irad Ortiz Jr. riding for Todd Pletcher. Now, this horse has not missed the board in 4 previous starts. The first 2 races were wins at Gulfstream Park. Then was second to Sovereignty in the Fountain of Youth, and Sovereignty ran a very good race in that Fountain of Youth, and this horse lost by only a neck that day. Then was third in the Bluegrass at Keeneland, finishing behind Burnham Square and East Avenue, and basically just could not get by either of those 2 horses. I think the biggest question I have with River Thames is the distance limitation. This race is 1 mile and 3/16. It's a 16th of a mile shorter than the Kentucky Derby. I didn't think River Thames was going to be able to get the 1.25 miles, and I don't necessarily know if he's going to be able to go this far either.
And I think from a trip perspective, I kind of anticipate him in the early stages to be right alongside Journalism, and I don't know if I have the confidence, based on what we've seen in the last 2 starts, for him to be able to finish with him. I just think Journalism has more kick at the end of it. River Thames, he really had the perfect trip and just could not get by East Avenue, who was a really well-meant pace setter there in the Bluegrass, then got swept by Burnham Square, similar with Sovereignty back in the Fountain of Youth. So I think he's going to be a factor underneath. I just don't know if he's got that kick at the end of this to get the job done.
And I have to say, we did mention this also. I do applaud the connections here for managing this horse correctly, because he would have had no chance in Louisville. No chance whatsoever. And they bring him back 2 weeks later to try it at the Preakness, and that, there have been horses that have done that and succeeded quite well. Cloud Computing comes to mind, and a couple of others of recent vintage that have won the Preakness early voting is another one. Then he was a speed horse all the way in front too. So that is certainly a good strategy by the connections with River Thames. Now our 4th pick is the long shot we put in here, number 9 Gosger. Now, very interesting story about this horse, and I saw this today, and I was wondering this myself, being a bit of a baseball nut and historian. This horse is named for a player with the Mets in the 1960s, and he also played with the Kansas City A's and the Boston Red Sox. He is the last player ever to have faced Satchel Paige in a Major League Baseball game. Satchel Paige, of course, the Negro League pitcher that was maybe the best pitcher ever in the Negro Leagues, and is in the Hall of Fame as a result of his exploits there. Jim Gosger is the name of the baseball player. He was on the '69 Mets that won the World Series, and one of the owners is a very big Mets fan. And they were originally going to try to name the horse Boswell after another member of that Mets team, Ken Boswell, but that was already taken. So they went with Gosger, and it actually invited the player up to come to Baltimore. He couldn't make it, so he's going to watch the race and be rooting for his namesake. But I think that's a great story because this horse won the Lexington, got a perfect trip to win that race, and ended up pulling away to win by 2. Irad Ortiz Jr. rode that day, elected to go to River Thames. So you get Luis Saez here, certainly not anything to sneeze at. I just think the price, 20-1 for when Brendan Walsh, was a good trainer as well. This horse just kind of stood out a little bit as a little price to put in.
Yeah, and I was thinking that was the story behind the name, but I didn't want to say it to be wrong, so I just kept it to myself, so I opted to go elsewhere. But no, I like that effort in the Lexington. That's a race that used to be part of our Road to the Derby contest, no longer there. So nice to see him pick up a win against some graded stakes company, and he's just a horse where, again, some of these horses are some known quantities that we've seen in the Derby, on the Derby trail. You kind of know their limitations. This horse is a little bit more of a wild card, and he only seems to be getting better at this point. I think if he can continue to improve, he could be a factor here.
Absolutely. This horse had a good race 5 weeks ago, so that's a really good spacing that we've been kind of talking about, and I think we're going to be talking about more in the future, as I think these races are going to end up having a schedule change coming up, especially if Derby winners continue to skip this second leg of the Triple Crown.
I was going to say, we've had this conversation a couple times here in the last handful of years, and that's kind of the whole point of the Preakness, right? It's the Derby winners going to come here, and can they get through second legs? If you don't have that, what do you really have here?
Well, and honestly, and I know all these people say, well, it's not really a Triple Crown. Balderdash, because going back in time, to 1930 and all that, Gallant Fox won the Preakness 4 days before the Derby. Then Secretariat, he wins the Triple Crown in 5 weeks. Fantastic. Now that's 43 years separation. We are now 52 years from when Secretariat won, and if you're going to sit there and tell me that the breed changed so much from 1930 to 1973, well, then it sure as heck changed a lot from 1973 to 2025, and you're going to have to fix that somehow.
It's just kind of always the question with horse racing, right? The sport is evolving. Are we going to evolve with it, or are we going to continue to be stuck in our ways a little bit?
Yeah, you can't be stuck in the mud. You got to get out and make some changes when you have to. The one horse we didn't mention real quick is the 4 Heart of Honor.
I was going to ask you.
Who was a runner-up in the UAE Derby, lost by a nose to Admire Daytona, who was overmatched in the Kentucky Derby. And while I applaud them for coming here and taking a shot with this, I don't necessarily know if this horse is going to be a factor.
Yeah, I thought this was pretty fascinating, right? We talk about the overseas horses coming in, especially the Japanese horses for the Derby. Now we've got an invader from overseas coming to the Preakness. I, too, just didn't quite know what to make of it. As I said, Admire Daytona, just kind of a no-show there in the Derby. Just a little bit too steep for him. So if he beats me at a price, I guess so be it.
I'm the same way. So, considering we had the same picks, I got through the handicapping of the race, we got a baseball history lesson, and a Triple Crown discussion as well. I thought this was a great video.
You never know what you're going to get here.
Absolutely. We're just throw it right up against the wall and see if it sticks. So that is our look at the 150th Preakness Stakes coming up on Saturday from Pimlico in Baltimore. And, of course, we encourage you to come out here to Harrah's Hoosier Park and take part in our Saturday festivities as well. We will have a very exciting live racing card that night as well.
Absolutely. We're looking forward to it. If you're here on track, we're going to have some on-track promotions. We're going to have some mega bets to give away. And if you're not here on track, we encourage you to tune into the Hoosier Park card on Fox Sports 2 from 8 to 11. We're going to be going back and forth with the Meadowlands. Gabe Pruitt's going to be handling that Fox Sports broadcast. You, me, and Bob will be handling the in-house show on that day. So we're looking forward to that. Should be a great card. Some series finals, some Indiana Sire Stakes eligibles as we get ready for that first leg on Memorial Day. Going to be a great weekend, really, from start to finish.
Absolutely. Looking forward to Preakness weekend as the final one at the old hilltop before they take it down and build a new Pimlico right there. So we'll see how it turns out. I think we're on the winner, though. We'll certainly see if we're right. And we'll come back in 3 weeks with the look at the Belmont Stakes from Saratoga. That'll be our next video in this series. And we do appreciate you watching on YouTube. And we appreciate your participation throughout the contest as well, the Road to the Derby contest throughout the spring, if you did do that. And we have culminated that, and now we're just keeping along the lines here and making sure that everyone knows that we're still watching these races.
Absolutely.
So for Jacob Reinheimer, I'm Michael Chamberlain, wishing the best of luck to you all.